Welcome to the History of Wilmington Part 2. This program is a little different than last year's program, which was an oral history of Wilmington. In that program, different long-term residents who lived here all their lives told about what it was like to live in Wilmington. It was so wonderful. It gave us all a really good feeling about what it was like here in Wilmington before '93. But tonight we have some local specialists in different areas, and they're going to talk about their key areas of interest in local history. Beginning this evening, we'll have Carolyn Harris. You may know her. She's the chairperson of the Wilmington Historical Commission, and she's going to talk about everything from the Herndon Tavern to the Bond collection and then back again. Following Carolyn will be Frank Hurley, who is the leader of the Wilmington Minutemen. He's going to talk about some older history. Following him will be Gerry O'Reilly, who is the author of Wilmington, a Retrospective. He's going to talk about local history as well as some Silver Lake information. And finally, we have Paul Chalifour, who is our most recent published author, who wrote Images of America, Wilmington. So he's going to talk about his perspective. I hope everybody stays for the wonderful refreshments that we have. You can probably smell those pies, taste that cider. We also are selling book bags in the back. We use those book bags to replace the book bags in the children's room. They're only $10 for members, $12 for acquaintances, so I hope anybody can pick those up. And anybody who is interested in membership, Barbara Hooper's back there, and she can answer questions on renewing or sign you up. So I hope you all enjoy the program and stick around for afterwards. We're going to have a question and answer period, and we also have books available for you to look at, and the Bicentennial's room is open for the Bond collection. Thank you.
I guess that means I'm on. When I was asked to speak, I was obviously very delighted because this is a subject near and dear to my heart, the Historical Commission and the historical resources in Wilmington. And then they said, well, you know, take about 10 or 15 minutes, Carolyn. And it was like, how can you sum up what you do with your life in 10 or 15 minutes? So I'll do the best I can. I thought I would start by really clarifying some probably misinformation that has circulated over the years as to how the Historical Commission actually came into being. And it is tied in with the history of the Herndon Tavern. When Dr. Rounds died, he sold that property to a developer by the name of Anthony Pilata. And I'm sure many people in the audience know much more about what went on because you were probably very active and at these town meetings when we acquired the Herndon Tavern. Because the property was going to be sold, and there was rumor that a gas station would appear in its place. Attorney John and Shirley Callan began to spearhead a move to acquire that tavern, and with the help of Madeline McKee and other citizens in town, including Adele Passmore, they worked very hard to make the town aware of the importance of this historical resource. And as a result, a historical commission had to be established. Because if the property were to be taken by eminent domain, it had to go to someone, and that someone or something was the Historical Commission. So it was established on June 25th, 1973. And shortly thereafter, the town voted to take the Herndon Tavern through eminent domain, and a sum of $45,000 was paid for the property. This is truly one of our greatest resources in town. Once the Herndon Tavern was acquired, the Friends of the Herndon Tavern was organized, basically to furnish, to work towards the improvement, the restoration, the preservation of that property. The Historical Commission today is working toward take the Herndon Tavern and the wonderful museum that people have worked on over the years and to expand it into the Herndon Tavern and Wilmington Town Museum. And we have basically publicized that fact. We've talked to various organizations in town. We have worked with the Buildings Department and with the Public Works Department towards that goal. And we're going to be very actively pursuing it because now we truly need a home for some wonderful historical collections that have been donated to the town. The original Historical Commission consisted of 5 members. Today, we have 7 members, and they are Dorothy Leofanitis, Jean Rowe, Frank West, Kathleen Reynolds, Jim Murray, Paul Chalifour, and Ann Berghaus. And our basic goal has always been to preserve the historical resources of the town of Wilmington and to educate the public as to what wonderful resources we have. History starts here, it starts right at home. And in doing so, we have really tried to push to have as many of these types of public meetings as possible. The program we had last year met with tremendous success. It was enjoyed by all. To listen to the citizens of Wilmington talking about how they remember Wilmington was just, I mean, that evening could have gone on and on and on, and many of you people were here for that, and you realize that. And it's our hope that that type of oral history will be done again and again and again. It's very important to have our citizens filmed recounting what they remember of Wilmington in the days gone by, and enjoy some apple pie too, I guess. In addition, through the veterans organizations in Wilmington, this past May, we ran a similar program in which we had a number of World War II veterans who came and discussed their experiences during World War II. And we had a question and answer period at that time. And we asked questions of the audience. What was it like? You know, what was it like on the home front? And that went on, and of course Gerry O'Reilly was very instrumental in this program, and it was a wonderful experience, and we truly hope to be doing more of that. We've been really pleased that we have some wonderful books that have been published. Paul's book, the Images of America series on Wilmington, is spectacular, as is Gerry's 2 books on Wilmington, a retrospective, and his Silver Lake, and they'll be talking more about that later on. The bond collection, I think what started us really going is the bond collection. In February, last February, we were, I shouldn't say last February, February 1997. The years just roll by. When you're in history, everything is in the past. I received a telephone call that a gentleman had some boxes that I might be interested in, or the commission may be interested in. And after contacting him, we began to realize what those boxes were. Arthur Thomas Bond lived in Wilmington. Well, he was born in 1852, lived most of his life here, and he began to collect primary source materials from the town of Wilmington for most of his life, with the goal of writing a book. And in 1904, he went before the Board of Selectmen at that time, requested the town give him a sum of $1,500 to write the book. And in that time, that was a lot of money. And the town, although they supported the project, could not pay for this project. And I think Mr. Bond, spending his whole life gathering the materials that he did, became really disappointed. And he subsequently left Wilmington with all of his memorabilia and went to New Hampshire. And although we had heard of this collection and everything that he had, we just figured it was in the 4 corners of the United States or beyond. Certainly collectors over time would have prized some of the papers that he had. When we realized what we were looking at, we campaigned to have that collection brought back to Wilmington. That's our history, that's our heritage. That collection includes so much. It has more than, I think, 14, 15 primary source Revolutionary War documents. It has 13 major town records, and major, they're like collections. The original map of the town of Wilmington has the original town seal in it. It has deeds of properties that date back to 1713. I have 5 pages of inventory of the bond collection. I mean, it is our history. And we were very grateful to the Board of Selectmen, to the Finance Committee, and to the public, because truly it was the public and their letters and calls to the town hall that gave us the support that we need to purchase that collection. Once we purchased the collection, it was delivered to us in September of 1997, and since that time we've been working, and I would at this time really like to thank Tina Stewart and Laurel Toole and Kathleen Reynolds from the Historical Commission for the work that they have done in helping to inventory, because we have to inventory every single box to read through every document. Our hope is that many of these documents can be photocopied so that they can be used for research. It's truly an outstanding collection. And to basically, so that the public will be aware of it, we've been changing the display cases in the bicentennial room. So that for tonight, I left out like the town map and the seal and some of the truly old documents, but we'll be doing a rotating display in those cases that will, over the next year or two, hopefully all of the documentation will be visible for the public. So when you're in the library, to choose your books and to read and meditate, stop by the Bicentennial Room and truly enjoy the history of Wilmington, because a good part of it, I'm very happy to say, is back here where it should be in Wilmington. And with that, our goal of making the Hardin Tavern a museum, although it's housed here, it's on a temporary basis, and we hope someday to have what we need in terms of resources to have truly an outstanding town museum where this can be housed for the public and for school children to take tours and to really understand the history of their community. I think the bond collection had so much publicity that other people began to realize that, gee, I have some things that maybe they'd be interested in that have been in the family for a period of years, and I've passed on what I want to friends or relatives, but this really belongs in Wilmington. And in that spirit, we had a call this past summer from Mr. and Mrs. John Hayward, formerly of Wilmington and formerly of East Sandwich on the Cape, and they were moving to New Hampshire, and they had in their possession we feel it's 18th century, late 18th, early 19th century organ that was owned by the Henry Wilson Sargent. I want to say Henny Penny, and he's probably very angry hearing me say that, because that wasn't his favorite complimentary term that he liked to hear people call him, but they refer to him a lot lately because of his whirligig and the fact that it was sold for so much money in New York as Henny Penny. And so we now have hit the organ that was in his home and used by him, and that's on display at the Hardin Tavern. And of course, while I'm talking about the Hardin Tavern, it's open the first Sunday of every month from 2 to 4 for tours, and of course the Christmas social will be coming up, and that's a wonderful time if you haven't visited the tavern to visit it the first Sunday in December, because it's truly decked out in all its glory. The Friends of the Hardin Tavern do a fantastic job. That was followed by another telephone call from a Marjorie Cotton Welch. And she lives up in Bow, New Hampshire, and she said that I have some things that I'm sure my mother would want you to have. And after a few trips back and forth by Kathleen Reynolds and by myself and Ann Berghaus, we acquired what we're referring to as the Marjorie Cotton Welch collection, which is a wonderful collection of photographs, artifacts, and documents that go primarily from the Civil War up to about the 1950s. documenting much of her family, but also some very beautiful pictures that we haven't seen before of Wilmington. So that was very exciting. And just very recently, in fact, the past couple of days, the Historical Commission received a gift from Marjorie Kennedy, basically from her mother, Marion Cole Connor, who I'm sure many of you very fondly remember. And it is a gentleman's coat that we feel that's probably the 1820s, in remarkable condition. And I brought it here this evening, and during the social part of the evening, please go into the Bicentennial Room and take a look at this remarkable. The condition is just fantastic. We also received from Franklin Allen a stereoscope and stereographs. And when you go in and take a look at them, you'll understand what it is. It's like the little thing you hold up and put pictures in it. And many of those pictures go back to the 19th century. There are so many wonderful things that have been donated to the Historical Commission lately. We're truly in awe. And we're hoping to be able to give it the home that it deserves. And we encourage anyone, as you're cleaning your attic, to think of the town of Wilmington's history. And, you know, these things will be on display, and it will be done in the appropriate manner with appropriate credit given. And it will be there for generations to come. And that's what history is all about. We want to pass it on from one generation to another, and what better way to do it than to take our own town, to have a town museum, and to display our history. So with that, and I'm sure I've forgotten about 100 things that I'm going to sit down and say, oh, I should have said this, and so forth. But the Historical Commission, we're busy, we're working. We'd really encourage people to participate as much as possible. As I said, I'd like to do some more of the oral histories. The Commission's very interested in that. We have a plaque program going on. I've heard from some people in town that have concerns and are interested in doing some research on their homes. We'll be working with them and hopefully recognizing some more of our historical resources in the future. And I thank you very much. As always, I thank you for your support, and the Commission thanks you for your support, and I hope to see you at our Hardin Tavern Town Museum in the near future. And I will turn the podium over to the Minutemen.
Good evening. I'll start out with a recruiting pitch. If anybody's interested, there are some flyers on the back table there. If you're interested in looking to the Minute Company and perhaps joining us in our annual events, we'd be pleased to have you. There's a brochure if you want to look at it. What I'm going to do, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. Back in 1930, at the town's 200th anniversary, a subcommittee made up a brochure, and I have a typing of what was in that brochure. It covers the period in Wilmington from 1730 to 1930. Since my portion of the program covers the Revolutionary War, I'm going to end at basically 1780s. It starts out, the year 1773 opened with mutterings of the approaching revolution. A town meeting pledged the town to join with Boston, yea, with the whole continent, for the security of the civil rights and recovery of those that had been taken from the colony by force. A year later, the town began to take action while building up its stock of powder and ball, which was stored in the attic of the meeting house. I'm not sure the identity of that meeting house. It perhaps was the old town hall, but I can't swear to that.
Congregational church.
Congregational church? They had powder upstairs in the Congregational church?
It was the original meeting house.
Yes, I guess you're right. Okay.
We have minutes that have church One article church, one article,
Okay, so that the powder was stored in the attic of the Congregational Church. In that meeting house on September 7, 1774, the town voted to accept the declaration of the Middlesex County Convention of August 30 and 31 at Concord, calling in ringing words for resistance unto death in defense of freedom. On March 6, 1775, but little more than a month before Concord and Lexington, Wilmington voted to call on every able-bodied man from 16 to 60 to report following Wednesday with arms and ammunition, and 3 days later voted to enlist 24 good able-bodied Minutemen. Diligent searchers of the archives have long since established that from the beginning men of Wilmington have given a good account of themselves in the armed conflicts that have made and preserved us a nation. In the French and Indian Wars, they fought as subjects of the Crown, the provincial forces. The character of that fighting may be judged from the fact that 14 of our Wilmington citizens, with their gallant captain, Ebenezer Jones, who built the original house on the Stanley farm, were buried in one grave following the Battle of Halfway Brook in 1768. The Reverend Isaac Morrow, for more than half a century minister of the Wilmington congregation, took the field with his neighbors and as a fighting person gave evidence of the sturdy qualities that caused him long to be regarded as the outstanding national figure in the history of our town. Again, like a true soldier of the Lord, he drew his sword in the Revolution. His is the chimney-like tomb in the southwestern angle of the new cemetery close by the old town hall. And on the slab top, slate slab top, among his and other names is cut, is that of Captain Cadwallader Ford. The Fords and the Merrills were related through marriage. On the fated morning of 19 April 1775, two companies of Minutemen started out on the road to Lexington very early in response to the alarm. Some of them commanded by Captain Cadwallader Ford, Jr., by the way, the other by Captain Timothy Walker. Later, another one went out, commanded by a Captain John Harnden. They fought at Lexington, Concord, and Bunker Hill. The number of Wilmington men who fought in the Revolution was 260, including 24 captains, several of whom rose to higher command. This indicates that nearly all of the able-bodied men of Wilmington were engaged in the struggle for liberty. Records of the Gowing family proudly cherish, well, wait a minute, that's going into later, into the 19th century, going in, yeah, into the 19th century. So that basically is a list of the activities of the Wilmington Minuteman Company. There were 27 members of the company. There was one captain, one lieutenant, two sergeants, 3 water bearers, and to this day we have yet to figure out whether a water bearer was considered a corporal and therefore the equivalent of a squad leader in current terms, or whether the water bearer was just a guy like Gunga Din who happened to be carrying a water bucket at the end of the road. And some of us begin to believe that perhaps the water bearers were those of the over 60 group that decided to join along and weren't quite able to keep up with the musket firing. So that's basically a story of the Minute Company. Since then, we were reformed in 1969 by authorization of the town Board of Selectmen. We've been a continuous organization from 1969 to the present, and we've marched in parades and took part in battle recreations all over New England, from Maine through Rhode Island, Connecticut, and some of us went from Wilmington up to Quebec back in the early stages of the company's regrowth as part of Arnold's expedition to Quebec. They recreated some of the agony of Benedict Arnold and his trip up through into Quebec, trying to capture Quebec, which unfortunately was was a disaster, but all the way through until 1981, some of us took part in the trip to Yorktown, Rochambeau's march to Yorktown, starting out in Rhode Island and traveling through Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, into Pennsylvania, down into Virginia, and finally winding up at the on the field at Yorktown, taking part in the recreation of the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Yorktown and the fight at the Redoubt. And if you've seen the History Channel, they have been running a series on the American Revolution, and they prominently featured a display of a showing of the Rochambeau's part in the Battle of the Revolutionary War, and some of us have had gone down to Yorktown on that. It was a fantastic trip. Probably, with the exception of a honeymoon, the best trip I ever had. I have to say it that way. That concludes my my part of the program. So, who's next? Thank you.
I get a lot of notes here, but I can't see them, and I have to take the glasses off. I'd like to thank the Friends very much for being here again. And I was born in Wilmington, a little house up the lake, and as a youth, I traveled the town from one end to the other, up to the Boy Scout camp up on the end of Mill Road, down to the guy who had the goat on the side of the hill at Bob Warner's gas station on South Main Street, to the old town dump up in Rattlesnake Hill. And, excuse me while I get this thing a little bit higher here. And so I roamed all over the town as a youth, and I enjoyed it. I just traipsed the town, and I'd leave in the morning, I'd come back in the afternoon, I'd be completely pooped out, but I had seen something new each day. And I think I was in every stream in the town, I was in every bog, and every piece of land that was wet, I walked through it. And to put a parody on Bobby Goldsborough's song, this is, I was in the places where apartments are today, where wetlands used to be. And building of the Wilmington retrospective book was a joy for me, and I cannot express how much feeling I got from being able to do it. It wasn't easy to start. In 1992, a friend of mine came to Wilmington who lived here a long time ago, Roy Ferguson, and Ferguson Road is named after his father. And he lived in Spain, Madrid, Spain for 30 years. He came to my house and he had some photographs that he took in 1950. I asked him if I could borrow them for him, and I did. I put them together in a little book and called it Ferg's 50s. Made a small distribution to our friends so that, you know, they just capture a moment in time with the pictures. 1995, the Historical Commission had a display on the Common, and Ferg's 50s was part of the display. Shortly after that, Ann Berghaus, an old friend of mine, got in touch with me and asked me, would I like to expand on that book for the Historical Commission? And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't I don't want to be bossed around by the Historical Commission. And I was kind of reluctant to do it, feeling that, they would tell me exactly what to do. And she said, no, they won't. No, they're nice people. And I says, well, we'll see about it. So then one thing led to another, and I relented, and I called Ann up and says, I'll come down and talk to the historical people. And I went in there with a chip on my shoulder, naturally, and I sat down, and it was going to be hard, and I said, I'm going to put this book together the way I want to do it. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to put the pictures in, and really giving it to them. And they just looked at me and all smiled and said, wonderful, when can you start? And and they trapped me right there in the spot. So I went outside and thinking about, where they had put me, the position they put me in. And I said, gee, thanks an awful lot. And with that, the Historical Commission gave me tremendous support to do anything that I wanted to do and with the book. And so I just went out. And knowing that there were photographs in the town, that people had some, Jimmy Durkee had a group, Adele Passmore came right to me and said, I have some. And slowly I collected everything and put it together as Wilmington Retrospective. It was in 3 parts, basically. The center of the town, which was pretty much the commercial area of the town where all the activity took place. North Wilmington, which is rural and a farm, and the city up at the Silver Lake. And the period covered was, say, roughly 1920 to 1960. And one thing of note, from the town line to Silver Lake, there were only 5 houses on the street. Woolivers and Matheson's on the right-hand side looking south. Carter's, O'Connor's, and Corneliuson's were on the left-hand side. That was it. And now I think there's about 25 houses there now. So that you can see how much it has been built up. As I went through collecting pictures for the book, I would meet people and ask them, do you have one? And as the collection grew pretty fast because people had a lot of them, and I'd go out into the community and show someone in the town a picture, and they'd look at it and they'd go like this, and I had the same reaction all the time. They go, and for about 10 seconds they were completely lost, and they knew exactly what was happening. They had a memory, and they had a picture that they could relate, and the picture just hardened that memory away. And I've talked to people since the book was published, and they've had the same reaction. Yes, oh, I remember this and I remember that. And I've looked at places, again, looking at the pictures, and I have distinct memories. Everyone I talk to don't even know what I'm talking about. They have their own memories. Everyone has a distinct memory of something, a place, the Wilmington Theater, or the bowling alley, or George's, a Jack's Lunch, somewhere in the town and they have their memory. They were there. I talking to a young woman who was a friend of mine, a teenager at the same time up the lake, and I said to her, what's your favorite memory of Silver Lake? And I thought she was going to cry. I knew exactly what it was. She had an old boyfriend who never come back. and the putting together the book was just exciting, and I developed it so that the text I put in were keywords to alert the reader to their memory and not my memory. And if I took, and there were 2 narratives where I took a trip from Wilmington Center to my back door, and in it I tried to touch all the people I'd meet on the way, as would other people would take, if they took the same trip around any time in their youth, they'd know exactly who I was talking about. And they had their memories of it. And one of the things that made it possible was the new technology in copying photographs. And I put together a little display that's in the room out there so you can look at it. And because it's so much simpler today than it was 10 years ago. And the point in question was Ann Butters had a picture, and she had some color pictures that she wanted to get copied. And she said, well, they're going to cost $16 to have a photograph retouched. I said, oh, no, let me take it. So I took the photograph that she had, which was 3 by 5. I went up to Rapid Repro and said to him, give me a couple of copies of this here, and enlarge them, go up twice size. Went back to Ann, gave her the picture, and she says, these are better than the originals. How much do I owe you? And I said, well, I just saved you $45. And that tells what the new system is. And the historical people will certainly tell you how gracious the Rapid Repro has been to me and to them. And anything that you want, you can have. And it is so simple to take an old photograph that, you know, you treasure it. It's the only one I've got. You bring it up there and it says, can I have a copy of this? And you get back something that's unbelievable, you know, and after I finished the Wilmington retrospective book, I started to do something for my father. My father was in the First World War and he was wounded, but he was a romanticist, and everything that he had relative to the war and his travels, he saved. So I began to put them together in a book, and I got to an end because he didn't identify anyone. And so then I'm thinking to myself, gee, I was in the Army too, you know. And, so I went through and I got all the pictures that I had that weren't identified, pasted them up. I ended up with, I think, 50 pages of, sometimes with 5 photos on a page or 3 photos on a page. Took them up to Rapid Repro, ran 10 copies off and sent them off to my old Army buddies. The copies are unbelievable, and it's the technology is really good. Silver Lake. The Silver Lake book was, I wanted to do it anyhow, and a portion of the retrospect was Silver Lake. Where all the city people lived who come up from Charlestown and East Boston. And we ended up there. Edith was my across the street neighbor, and I'd be sent over to her house on a Sunday morning to get the newspaper, because she sold them when Annie Rainey went to church. The Higginbotham sold the newspapers for Annie. And doing the lake portion was a joy, and I am still working on it. I'm continuing oral history, and last week I got a letter from Sherman Williver, and it was a story about Mud Pond in Tewksbury. And I'm thinking, Mud Pond is it's a small pond on South Street, which runs into Wilmington, and it was where we hung around when we were kids, and you think that this was our favorite place. Nobody knows about it. Sherman, who was 20 years older than I am, was telling me my story, and I said, "This is not fair." I said, "Why does he know what I already did?" And those are the kind of things I'm collecting for. I guess Wilmington's, Silver Lake's memories that haven't faded, and it's going on. And each day I get another story, and one interesting fact that when I did both of the books is that there's so many things that I didn't know, and so much information that's out there in the town that we should know and collect it, and this is the way to do it, through television and orally, and then putting it down so that we all know about it. I couldn't have done it without the Historical Commission, and I thought that this little group of tough people, in my mind now, I hope that they'll support me in anything I want to do in the future, is that they are the hardest working committee in the whole town. They work collectively together, and whatever project they start, they do it, and it comes to fruition. All right, thank you.
I think I'm the only one that didn't bring any notes tonight, so I'm just going to have to wing it. I kind of got sucked into doing the job that I did, going to the Historical Commission looking for a little bit of information. Back in 1992, my wife and I bought a house on Hopkins Street, and we thought it was a very nice house, and it is, and we loved it, just perfect for us. And we decided to have some work done to it a couple months after we bought it. The contractor that was doing the work one day happened to be taking some pieces of the house apart, and I happened to be out in the yard doing some work also, and he asked me how old the house was. And I told him, it's about 60, 70 years old, and he says to me, no, it's much older than that. It's at least 150 years old, maybe older than that. And I said, oh, really? And he pulled a bunch of hand-cut nails out of the side of the house and handed them to me. And he said to me, yeah, it's at least 150 years old, maybe older. Do you know anything about it? And I said, no, because I thought it was 60 years old, so obviously I didn't know anything beyond that. A few months later, I went to the Historical Commission. I approached them at one of their meetings and asked if they had any information about the house, seeing how old it was, and it not being on their list of historic houses in the town, they didn't have anything. And I think part of the reason for that was that the house it changed hands so many times over the past 100 years. It's probably had about 25 owners. I'm probably the 26th, 27th owner that it's had since it's been built. And it's had some renovations done to it, so it doesn't have the appearance that it originally had. So I did some work on it and went to the Registry of Deeds and found some information about it and dated it probably around late 1700s, early 1800s, most definitely around 1815. It was there, quite possibly before that. Well, I went back to the meeting and told everybody about this, and they generously told me that they had an opening on the commission. Why don't I join? So I said, why not? So I did. And a few meetings after that, after I was appointed, I said to the other members if they knew anything about the Images of America series of historical books, local history books, and they were a little familiar about it, but they weren't too much, they didn't know too much about it, and I didn't know anything about it other than seeing them in local bookstores. And Carolyn wrote to the company and got a packet of information and very informative about how the books were set up and everything. And she asked me if I'd be interested in looking into possibly having a book about Wilmington included in the series. And I said, being interested in history as I was, I gladly accepted it. I probably should have asked my wife first, but she was tremendous help and support when I was doing it. So it started out contacting the company, and the company is very flexible as to what people can do with it. Basically, they tell you two things. All the photographs that you need have to be black and white, and you can have no more than 240 photographs, and they have to be contained on 128 pages. And anything else you want to do. So that's what I did. And I tried to get as much about the town over the greatest period of time that I possibly could. And I started with a brief history about the town, and then moved on to the photographs, and I divided the book up into several sections, each covering a specific time frame, and each covering a specific aspect of life in town. Different homes, agriculture, transportation, the police department, the fire department, schools, churches, and what have you. And I ended up getting, I think, 209 photographs into the book, and I had to exclude quite a few photographs just because I ran out of pages to put them on. And I was able to get documents as far back as the 1840s included in the book, and photographs as far back as the 1870s. And they go right up into the mid-1960s, and a great help and a great many photographs in the book came from the bond collection just in a nick of time. And my wife can attest to this also. We're on vacation, and I was panicking because I didn't think I had enough photographs, and the town bought the photographs just in time. So I was able to include about 50 photographs from the bond collection in the book, and it got to the publisher on time. And it was published, and it came out in March of this year, and the response has been tremendous to it. Every place I go in town, little stores, the hardware store, several other stores in town that carry it, other major bookstores in the area that carry it, and I see it all over the place, and it's quite a joy to see all the work that you've done and see it on a bookshelf, or see it on a bookshelf in the library or a bookstore or something like that. And a lot of people in town, a lot of people who are sitting here tonight, helped me tremendously putting it together. the donations of family heirlooms that they entrusted me with was tremendous. Photographs that were 100 years old, documents that were 100 years old, personal family items that they let me take for long periods of time, and that made the book possible. And it was all these people together, not just me. I mean, I just put the photographs together, but it was all the people in town, in the library here, and all over, different town departments that donated their time in telling me about the photographs, and also their photographs themselves. And it was a joy putting them all together, and I was pleased with the way the book came out, and I've got nothing but positive response from it. And I'll probably get in a little trouble for this, but I'd like to do another one sometime. And that's about it.
Do we have any questions for our wonderful speakers, our panel?
When did we get the hard copy?
Carolyn? When did we get the Herndon Tavern? When did we buy it?
The Highland Tavern was purchased in, and I have the date, 1973. Yes.
I was wondering if there's an actual list of all the men that fought in the Revolutionary War. I know you said there were like
169.
169,
Yeah.
okay. Is there actual list of the names of these people somewhere?
Lists were difficult to come by because this would include people who were in the militia companies, people in the minute companies, and also those who left the companies and joined the Continental Line companies. So the only list that we really have is the 27 men who were part of Cadwallader Ford's company of Minutemen. I believe there's a list in the room in here. I have a copy of the list. But that's really the only list we have. And the only way we were able to get that is through the rather mundane result of everybody who marched in that company putting in for the pay that they would do to get from the Commonwealth for serving in that period. And that's the only list that we have been able to find in the documentation in the archives in, well, it's over in Southwestern now.
Thank you.
Dorchester, yeah.
I could also add to that, as part of the bond collection is the original training band list, and it's on display in the Bicentennial Room.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Hurley.
Yes?
We just recently moved to Church Street, and on Patriots Day, around 3 o'clock in the morning, we heard a big boom right next to the window. We thought we were under attack. We were told that the Minutemen march down, I guess you said, to Lexington that night. Where do you start, and how long does it take you?
Well, what it amounts to is on the, well, it depends on what day the parade is that we're going to, or what the circumstances are for the weekend. But historically, the concept was that on the 18th of April, the original rider came through Wilmington to alarm the town and to warn the captains of the militia and minute companies that the regulars were out and heading towards Lexington, towards Concord. The original company formed up in March, started marching from Wilmington, and as close as we can tell, it was probably up on the field at the corner of Federal and Middlesex Avenue. There used to be a, well, there's a house there. It used to be an open field behind it. We believe that, as far as we can find out from Laura's primarily, that was the field where they started. They started there at about 2 o'clock in the morning. They headed towards Lexington because that's where the first action was taking place. They got as far as, well, they walked along what used to be a path parallel to Route 62. And at the Burlington-Woburn line, some of the other riders came by and passed the word on to the several companies that were then marching in that area. There was Woburn, Stoneham, and Reading, and Bill Ricca had finally come down that way, headed towards Lexington. They were all headed towards Lexington. The riders said that they had already gone through Lexington. They had fired, and several of the Lexington Minutemen were injured and were killed. So the captain of the 2nd Regiment, Middlesex Regiment, who commanded all of those companies from Bill Ricca, he took command about at that point in time, and they all headed then down towards Concord. And by the time they got pretty well into Concord, they heard that British regulars had already left Concord, so they wound up going down what's called Old Bedford Road, and they met, they got to Miriam's Corner just before the regulars came through that area. Now, they were marching with outrider companies on either side, light infantry on either side, clearing the areas before them as they headed down towards the road. Well, unfortunately for them, that is, they came to Miriam's Corner, and there was one narrow bridge across a creek. And in order to get across that creek, all of the outriding companies had to go back in and go over the bridge, practically one man at a time. Well, that was the point where companies from all of the local companies, Reading, Stoneham, company from Framingham, and several other companies, had already surrounded the area around that bridge, and they were all hiding behind rocks and started picking them off. What had started as a retreat from, as a return to Boston from Concord, then became a retreat, and very shortly became a rout, and it was a matter of Minutemen chasing the Redcoats all the way back. So we commemorate that every year. Not every member, but some members start at the town common at 2 o'clock on the morning, generally of the 18th, and the 19th, I'm sorry, by then it's the 19th. We meet, have breakfast on the 18th, and then we start walking on the morning of the 19th. We go down, we start at the town common, go down Church Street, stop and serenade our friends at the fire department, and then we continue on. Most of the members wind up having stopping at what used to be Sweetheart Plastics entrance there, and we some of us head home at that point in time. Some others, more hardy, continue the walk all the way out to Miriam's Corner, and I clocked that at 14.5 miles. The concept is that you walk there, you looked and you read the stone monument, which is at Miriam's Corner, denoting it, and then you get into cars and you go down to Arlington and you march in a 4-mile parade. So that's the hardy souls that do that. We have some that have done it every year. We had one member who's done it for over 20 years. We have some that have done it 10 years, 8 years. I did it once. I did it in 75, and after I proved I could do it, I didn't bother. But we still wind up going through down Church Street firing, and if we wake you up, our apologies, but we're trying to celebrate something that we feel pretty strongly about.
Thank you.
You want?
The back. Are any of you responsible for the beautiful blown-up photographs that are at Market Basket?
When they renovated, I was contacted by a representative from the Demoulas family, and because the Wilmington Market Basket was the third supermarket that he had opened. He felt that he wanted to give something back to the town, and that in doing so, it would be nice to have some historical pictures. You know, at which time I had him contact Adele Passmore, who has a wonderful collection of historical pictures, and she worked to select the right ones to represent the town and business and transportation and so forth in the town.
Do you know what year that class is of the school picture over there at Market Basket?
Ed Sargent. Eddie Sargent was in it. Right. And I think it was the 6th grade. We can figure it when he, I think it may be around 1910. I'm not sure, but something like that.
Yeah. I want to go 1909, 1910.
Yeah, somewhere in there, right.
Any other questions? I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Oh, yes?
When did they stop harvesting the cranberries?
When did they stop harvesting the cranberries? Anybody?
The cranberry bog on Shawshing Ave? I would say, no, I would say it was early 1970s.
Was a cranberry bog.
Yeah, Rotary Park. There was a cranberry bog off of Glen Road.
Yeah.
There was one up in North Wilmington, in Hathaway Acres area, right off of Route 62. There was another small one down in the area where Colonial Park Mall is, that triangle. It's surrounded by Main and Cross and Lowell Street. And there was the biggest one that I remember is the one on Shawshing Ave, and I lived across the street from it. But
That apartment on Middlesex Avenue, the 4-apartment building right there, that was known as the Cranberry House.
yeah, there's I think there's some pictures in Gerry's book that show that at that time on being used as a box crates, boxes of the cranberry crates on the porch.
Right.
One thing that during the war, I get the chance to work at the Cranberry Bog on Shawshing Avenue. I worked a half a day. I quit. I said, I'll never do this again. This is the hardest work I've ever done. But they had German war prisoners harvested in the late years of the war, and all the cranberry bog. And it was the Lowell Cranberry Company.
Mrs. Keller let that be flooded, and we used to skate down there. That was flooded every year. That's Rotary Park. We skated there every winter.
And you skate up on Shawshing Avenue.
Up the back yard. Up the back.
Up the back lawn with the little front.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I hope you'll share our hospitality. I hope you'll take a chance to walk through the Bicentennial Room and see all the things that are set up. I definitely hope you'll visit the back table and get the information on the Minutemen and the Friends of the Library. Buy a book bag and enjoy. Thanks for